right, everyone, I'd like to call to meeting, the board meeting for December 21st, and ask everybody to rise and join in the singing of O Canada. Choir was in good voice tonight. Director, can you proceed with roll call?
Trustee Buckland.
Present.
Trustee Carpenter.
Present.
Trustee Garrow.
Present.
Trustee McPherson. On teleconference. Trustee McPherson. We'll get back to that one. Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Trustee McMillan.
Present.
Trustee McRae.
Present.
Chair Petersma.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
And Student Trustee Jacob.
Present. So Trustee McPherson is not online, that's our understanding?
He was online.
All right. Approval of the agenda. Trustee McMillan, Trustee Garrow, all in favor? Opposed, that carries. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Report from the Committee of the Whole private session December 14th. One personnel matter was discussed during a regular meeting private session on December 14th. No recommendations have been brought forward. Moving now to the approval of minutes. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll look for approval of minutes. Trustee Carpenter, Trustee McAllister, all in favor? Opposed, that carries. Thank you. All right, trustees, we now come to first item on the agenda, which is the election of a first vice chair. I have received open the floor first for nominations. I received 2 nominations. Currently, are there any other nominations?
I can hear you. Excuse me for interrupting. Mr. McPherson has just emailed me to say I can hear you.
Okay.
Let's reconnect.
Trustee McPherson, can you hear us? Maybe you need to uncheck the mute button or something on your phone.
Yeah, you're right. We can hear him.
You can hear him, but it's very low.
Lisa, can we hear you?
Yes.
Oh, good. He's talking there, too.
Yeah.
Maybe zoom out.
Trustee McPherson, do you want to try reconnecting, please? So I've called once for nominations. Are there any other nominations? I have nominations just so you know, from Trustee Carpenter and Trustee McMillan. Third time call for nominations. Seeing...
Hello?
Hey, Trustee McPherson?
Yes, I could hear you guys on my phone, but you couldn't hear me, so I'm on the cell phone now.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Trustee Swan, you're still there?
I think we're knocking each other off.
Yes.
Oh, she's there,
Okay.
good.
All right, so I think I've been down to 3, right? Nobody, so, the motion to move, nominations closed for the position of first vice. Trustee McDonald, trustee McCray, all in favor? Opposed, that carries. So, candidates, for the position of first vice, which I have trustee Karkner, nominated by trustee Garrow, and trustee McMillan nominated by trustee McCray. We'll be provided with 3 minutes to address the trustees. I will go in the order that I received the nominations, and the first nomination I received is trustee Karkner. It's going to give me a second to get my timer going. And then the floor is all yours. Are you ready, trustee Karkner?
Ready?
Go.
This past year as trustee has been one of listening, learning, and decision-making. When I ran for the position of trustee, I stated clearly that I was making our students my main focus. That focus hasn't changed, and I'm pleased that as a board, we have put students first in our decision-making. I believe everyone at this table does have the same vision, and we do our best for the students with the funding we receive. Our board has grown together as a team, and our discussions are open and honest. I've had a good working relationship with the Management Council, and this shall continue in the position as first vice chair. In my year as trustee, I have used the hallway technique in getting to know administrators, staff, parents, and students in my ward and elsewhere. We are a very diversified board with different needs in each worksite. A one-size-fits-all solution does not always apply to all areas. I bring previous awareness, experience, and knowledge of our board to this table, as well as leadership and organizational skills. I'm a good listener and know that there are 2 sides to every issue or story. I have the time and the desire to continue serving our students and parents. I have been open and sincere with my opinions and comments during our meetings. I serve on the OSPA Program and Education Committee representing the Eastern Region. I serve on 2 board committees, SEAC Policy and Code of Conduct. I've attended conferences, Small School Summit, Student Senate, transition team meetings, school hubs, and special events such as the signing of the agreement with the Akwesasne Board of Education. Each experience has allowed me to better understand the work of our staff and the dedication to the education of our students. In closing, I want to thank Bill for your work as first chair, Bill. Trustees, I seek your support for the position of first vice chair of the Upper Canada District School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Karkner. Trustee McMillan, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is a privilege to be considered for the position of first vice chair. Since becoming a trustee, I have worked diligently to gain the confidence of my fellow trustees and my community. Through my actions and words at the table, in committees, and in my community, I have displayed my passion for education, my dedication to the goals and initiatives of our board, and my deep desire to provide the best possible learning experiences for all of our students. I've worked hard to maintain my credibility as an educator by consistently putting the safety and future of our students first. I have respect for myself, I have respect for others, and I take full responsibility for all of my actions. I believe strongly in doing the right thing, but more importantly, doing the next right thing. I take a deep pride in my integrity. I have strong interpersonal skills, which allows me to connect with all members of our school community, students, parents, school staff, and people from all walks of life, both in my constituency and throughout all areas of Upper Canada. I'll do whatever it takes to promote the goal of our board to obtain a 90% graduation rate. I never turn down an invitation to volunteer my time where I can share my experience and collaborate with teachers to provide a rich and engaging learning experience for our students. Every Monday morning, I go to Thousand Island Secondary School where I talk individually to male students who are at risk of completing their education. They see me as a non-judgmental, caring adult who they can reach out to and trust. In our chats, we talk about ways of keeping them engaged and in school. Through these conversations, I gain insight into the barriers our students face. As first Vice Chair, I will be committed to moving our board forward with positive energy. We have come together as individuals representing the specific concerns of our communities to form a strong team with the best interests of our students at the heart of our actions. I want our team to continue to move forward with our initiatives, including mental health, equity, and inclusive education. Yesterday, I sat in the audience at Commonwealth Public School where I watched the students put on a Christmas concert. The first act involved a group of grade 1s in full costume performing a song. As I sat there looking into their eyes and watching them wave to their adoring parents, swinging and swaying to their own rhythm, it became so clear to me that the reason all of us are here is because of them. We are here for one reason, and that is to provide a safe, positive, engaging learning opportunity for all our students. They deserve the best we can give them. As first Vice Chair, I will help lead us as a strong team in that direction. I will perform my duties with dedication, total commitment, credibility, and integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McMillan. Okay, we'll now move to the votes. Before I do that, though, I'm going to appoint 2 scrutineers. I'd ask that Terry Davies and Rick Gales act as scrutineers. Lisa, give the ballot. Those online, this is your cue to send respond to Terry's electronic ballot with the name of the individual that you're voting for. While the ballots are counting, we'll have a brief recess, which don't go too far, because once the ballots come back, we'll get back to work.
Well, that's not, you don't see anybody.
No.
Did you get like the forging block and things? You went to that. Something coming back externally, so it didn't download anything, like boiled them, and did you go click control? Did you go click? No, control click. That's how I opened it too. Okay.
It included directory.
Right. I'm like always doing it.
And just switch control.
Control click. I'm highly when it comes to. So how did you do it? No, I simply wanted.
Put you all in one. Only 5 characters in each one. Put 5 in one and then I put...
Oh, I want to see the other one.
I had Jeremy and Ian.
On?
But it is just, yeah.
Do I test? Yeah.
See if I can show you. Are you on there?
All that extra travel. Okay, I have the result of the election for first vice chair, and I'm very pleased to announce that trustee Jeff McMillan is successful in the election as first vice chair. Congratulations, Jeff. Congratulations to trustee Karkner for putting your name forward and being part of the process. Trustee, I need I'm assuming you are going to accept the position, yeah? Change your mind now. I need a motion to destroy the ballot. Trustee McDonald, trustee Garrow. All in favor? Opposed, it carries. Trustee McMillan, please come up and join me here. Give these to you. Hey,
Now we got some room now.
Behave yourself over there.
Yeah, I think this side of the table is gonna... I think without Jeff, we're in trouble or what?
I know that time pretty well.
Watch it.
That's over here.
Okay. All right, we're going to move now to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Character Always initiative. And for this, I'm going to turn it over to Director Thomas.
We've been very fortunate as a Board of Education to have begun approximately 6 years ago an examination of our values, our beliefs, and that became our character education values. Soon to follow was our credo. Approximately 4 years ago, we prepared our first book, and it was very well received. It was a second book that really focused on teachers and area of character. And tonight we are going to have a presentation from Brenda Badette, who's our principal of school improvement, and she's going to talk a little bit about something we're very proud of that you'll see tonight now. Over to you, Brenda.
Thank you, Director Thomas. I've brought copies of the previous books that were created by staff and students within the Upper Canada District School Board. The first book was completed in 2007, Stories of Character, and this was the first of the 3 books. And in this book, it talks about, or there's stories about individuals, adults and students, school initiatives that have been done that exemplify what we're all about as an organization, as a school organization, to promote character. In the second book, which was completed in 2009, is focused on generosity in action. And this book tended to have a greater focus on the adults in the school system that were doing wonderful things to promote character and support all of our learners. The third book, which was initiated in April of 2011, is called Kids of Character, a Celebration. And the difference in this book is that a number of things. Rather than having it being adult-centric, we wanted this book to be about the students. So the stories are all written by the students, about the students, and the illustrations are all done by the students. This book is, when we're working on this book, we wanted it to be something that could be used in the classroom and be accessible to all of our learners. So the stories that are in this book are written from kids that are in grade 1 right through to grade 12, and they're written, some of them are written in French, where there's an English version as well as a French version of the story. The illustrations are done by either the author of the story or by other students from other schools. And the illustrations are done so that students in grade 1 that are using this in a class can actually pick up cues from the story before or as the story is being read. So we try to keep the language as true to the student as possible. So there are some fun little nuances to the language in the earlier years. And as the stories are done by older students, you'll see that the language evolves just as the child evolves. I just wanted to point out a few of the stories to you. I think that all of you have a copy at this point. If you could turn your attention to page 34 and 35, this is an example of a story that was submitted by some students at Kemptville Public School, and because there's a strong French immersion program there, the request was to have the story written by the French immersion students, written in French, and then translated so it would be accessible to all other students. So the story that you see on the right-hand side is the same story that is on the left-hand side. If you turn to page 46 and 47, this is an interesting story from the perspective of how it was written. So the story on the left-hand side is written from the perspective of the individual that experienced the unfortunate event of having her shirt torn when she was in phys ed classes. It was purely by accident. She pulled on a thread on her shirt, and there ended up being a hole, and so how she felt about it. And then on the right-hand side is her friend's perspective of that same event. So the two students wrote the stories. They didn't realize that they were writing the stories from different vantage points, but when they were handed in to the teacher realized that they were, and so that teacher submitted the two stories. So it was interesting that although the perspective is different, it's about the same event. The other thing that I'd like to draw your attention to with this particular story is the illustration. And just to give you an idea of how deep and layered this book is, the illustration that was done for this particular story is done by a student who attends Cornwall Collegiate and Vocational School. So the story was written by a grade 4 student, the illustration is done by a grade 11 student, and the grade 11 student happens to be one of our international students. So there are different nuances to this book. If you turn your attention to page 89, this is another story which I think is really interesting because it talks about a mother who, a mother's challenges as she was going through life. She ended up having to leave school for a period of time, and then when she finally got to the point where she could actually remain in school and finish up her diploma, she finished her diploma last year. And so when you turn the page to page 90, you'll see that there's a picture of her at graduation with her children, and the principal of the school there also, and Mr. Coombs. And the last piece in this book that I'd like to just draw your attention to, I think deserves special attention, is Kind Friends. And the little stories that are told here about some peer helpers that come into a class are written by students that are in a system-designated class at Smith Falls. And what I really liked about this one is on the page 93, you can see how the different kids communicate. So the illustrations, the pics that you see with the words underneath, there's a student that cannot communicate the same as you or I, so that child would point to pictures which would then generate these graphics for them with the word underneath. So I think that as we are focusing our students and ourselves on the importance of character always, it's really important to understand how different we are, but also how similar we are. And through these stories, students from different schools and different grade levels are given an opportunity to see and appreciate different things that are happening that we need to celebrate. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Swan or Trustee McPherson, one or maybe both have, can you mute your phones? I think one of you is listening to the webcast and we're getting that back through on our audio. Thanks. Comments, questions, trustees? Trustee McCrae.
I'm just wondering, in terms of circulation, who exactly gets copies of this book, or like all the students, or like who gets
copies of all of the? A copy of the book has been given to all of the students that submitted stories or illustrations. So those were sent out last week, and they're being received through the courier this week with certificates. There will be copies that will be sent to the schools in the new year. If it's an elementary school, there will likely be 2 copies sent. If it's a high school or a larger school, there'll be 3 or 4 copies sent, depending upon the school population. So it'll be the same as with the previous 2 books, that there'll be copies given to the office to use as the office feels fit, and then there'll also be copies given to parent council for their use and circulation.
Any trustee that would like copies, just talk to David and he will get copies. Trustee McAllister?
Brenda, I think this is a wonderful tool. Is it available online?
Not yet, but that's the next stage to this. I think there's approximately 10 additional stories that will be included in an online version that weren't included in the hardcover or hard copy version, just because of space. So it is planned that it will be put online.
I think that's a valuable tool, because 2 books in the school is not sufficient. I was thinking more of a class set that various classes could use at some point, but if it's online, then anybody can access it, right?
And there are enough copies that if schools request additional copies, they can get additional copies.
Very good.
We also send the Premier will have a copy. It'll be his third. He's actually responded each time, and the deputy ministers and the staff get it as well.
Any other comments, questions? Trustee Garrow?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Just 1 second, Bill. I'm going to go to Trustee Garrow and then I'll come to you.
Okay, you guys are about 5 seconds behind.
Okay. Go ahead, Trustee Garrow.
Through you, Chair. Brenda again. I'm always amazed at, I guess, the work that we don't know of and that comes forward like this. I mean, I've noticed the other 2 volumes which I have, and I wasn't even aware you were working on a 3rd one, and thinking of how to top that one. As I say, it just amazes me that the good work that comes from the board, and it's using this as with kids and that, it's remarkable. I applaud you. Good stuff.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Trustee McPherson?
Yeah, I've used that book in the past. That I like to have copies with me when I speak to a group, and it's a nice thing to leave behind when you're speaking to a group that's not really related to school. Like the municipal councils, the odd time I'll get invited out to the service clubs. And it just makes a nice thing to leave behind when you leave. And it presents a different view of our board. I think it's an extremely valuable tool to have. and I know I'll be asking for 8 or 9 copies like I have in the past. And that's just my comment. And the book outlines a lot of stories of character, but I can tell you there's a lot of character happens that doesn't get reported in that book too.
Thank you, Trustee McPherson. Any other comments? Director?
Thank you, Peter, for those kind words. I know that with the trustees in the past have taken 10 or so or more with them. They're a great thing to have along if you're speaking to a group. But page 84 is a very interesting one. And it's a little boy, you may remember the story that happened in front of Young. Their farmhouse burnt to the ground. And a little boy came back to school the next day because that's what they do. You know, school is a safe place. And in the story he tells was really neat because I was there a couple of days after. Charlotte gave me a toy. The family lost everything. And it was just a wonderful moment. And as Bill has just said on the phone, there's all kinds of these stories that don't go told because our schools are filled with character, but there's a neat little story there too. So take a look at it. For a grandchild, it's a great stocking stuffer if you have grandchildren.
What about children, or is it only for grandchildren?
I'm just
Were you just of that age when you only think people have grandchildren?
No, I'm just saying to my son if he's watching.
It's okay, it's fine.
But my grandchildren.
Okay, Matt. Stevie, get on with it. Always count on you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much, Brenda, for bringing that forward. David, it's certainly a great project, and one that, as has been mentioned, just keeps building on its strength. And I really like the idea of making it electronically available so that it can be used quickly. And I think that's excellent and shared.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our next item, which is update on Children Mental Health Ontario Annual Conference. And Trustee McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. You have before me my report, and I'm certainly not going to read it to you, but I would like to select a few themes which align rather closely with our own mental health work group initiative. The first theme is resources and help. The government and the new minister, Dr. Eric Hoskins, is on board with resources, limited as they are at this point, and is endeavoring to maximize service by demolishing the silos within government. Interestingly enough, that ought to be and is our goal at a board level when working with our partner agencies. The time to act is now. The government's program is called Open Minds, Healthy Hearts, and it offers a comprehensive approach to transforming the mental health system through a clear vision and mission. What I find quite interesting is that there's an obvious and purposeful meeting of the minds on the issue of child and youth mental health, now better known as well-being and resiliency. One example is this: quite independently of the board's mental health work group, many schools are raising awareness successfully around the issue of anxiety, depression, conduct disorder, ADHD, eating disorders, schizophrenia, and bipolar diseases. In our schools throughout Upper Canada today, we find evidence of speakers, newsletters, student-driven cyberbullying campaigns, suicide awareness campaigns, online support groups, theatrical presentations, and other assemblies. It's my hope that we can coordinate efforts with our friends in the Co-Terminus Board to maximize our resources for the benefit of all our children, because the issues of mental health do not respect boundaries of any sort. Second theme is boards. There were, as a result of this new government initiative, 15 boards were selected for some additional funding, and they were supported. Initially, the Upper Canada District School Board was not amongst those 15, and initially I was quite disappointed because I felt that we had a lot to offer and perhaps a lot to gain by it. I'm now aware and convinced that we have more to gain by waiting, getting our own house in order, and learning from the other boards and their work. And there are 3 boards and 2 agencies in particular that are doing some fine work. One of them is Hamilton Wentworth, Trillium Lakelands, and Thunder Bay. And the 2 agencies are Ontario Shores, with its work by Dr. Stanley Kuchar, and the work of Dr. Ian Mannion at CHEO. And I have gained a considerable amount of information for our use. The third theme is the need for action. Dr. Ian Mannion at CHEO points out quite brilliantly, actually, and quite achingly. He says that an earache is no different than a psych ache. It has similar symptoms characterized by change in physical or emotional changes in behavior. We need to develop within our young people from an early age a toolbox which includes problem-solving abilities, sociability, secure attachment, pro-social, peers, resiliency, appropriate discipline, limit setting, structure, healthy lifestyle, and self-esteem. Dr. Mannion noted that schools are not responsible for meeting every need of the students, and that schools can be a bad place to work. Therefore, supports are needed. The fourth theme is early treatment. Dr. Kathy Short, who is the coordinator of evidence-based education and services at the Hamilton Wentworth Board, spoke about the Ontario vision as outlined in Open Minds, Open Hearts, where the focus is on the first 3 years and the identification and intervention which begin to address the problems of poor academic achievement, the dropout rate, unemployment, poverty, homelessness, and criminal behavior. The fifth theme is our own mental work group, and there are many resources available to parents, children, and adolescents. The challenge that we are facing is not to make a one-plan-fits-all, because that is really not very desirable, given the size of our board and its diversity. I'm convinced that we are developing a good plan to improve the delivery of mental health services in Upper Canada, and Superintendent Valerie Allen and I hopefully will be making a more comprehensive presentation at a later meeting. There are a number of questions and answers that I'm sure that several groups are asking. One of them is students, and we must really put them first. Students I know are asking, am I alone? And the answer is no. Where can I get help? Kids, I would ask you to speak and share your pain with an adult whom you respect and trust. He or she will do no worse than listen and care, and hopefully direct you to the best professional help available. Parents are also asking, are we alone? The answer is no, and where can we get help? I would start with the school principal and to seek the services of agencies in your area. Administrators, teachers, and support staff professionals are asking also, are we alone? And the answer is no. I would urge them, this group, to take advantage of the professional development which is being delivered now and in the future. And our work group hopes to make recommendations to improve this situation. We do not expect our teachers or our educational assistants to be professionals in the area of psychoanalysis or psychology or whatever, or psychiatry, but oftentimes the answer is much more simple. It's a simple question of listening. Premier Dalton McGuinty and the Honourable John Baird have recently conveyed the message that it gets better. Rick Mercer has added 2 very important words. It needs to get better now. While I do not speak for the board, I'm certain that my colleagues share my feelings about our work, and it's easier said than done, but try and get the help you can now. So that concludes my report. So I gained a lot of information from the conference, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee McAllister. Any comments or questions? Trustee McRae?
Yes, through you, Chair. When I read this article, like the article on Open Minds and Healthy Minds, on page 23, breaking down silos, of which Trustee McAllister mentioned, and I think this is really important to rural communities. When the mental health initiative came forward at this board, I mentioned at that time the importance of involving what the Ministry of Health had brought forward were these family health teams. And there's an example here, if you read this document, in rural regions of Grey and Bruce County, where in fact they have collaborated and worked with family health teams. And I just wondered, because there's so many of these being set up within the province of Ontario, are we in fact having discussions, our board, with these family health teams? Is this been investigated or being considered?
Director?
Yes, we've begun the conversations, and each of our hospitals know that we are ready to run with them. As John eloquently said, right now with all of the fur is flying, and it's a really interesting situation as the province has dug into this. And there's a lot of, what I see from my perspective, a lot of people with quick answers, but I think the answers are going to rely on a much deeper conversation with our entire community. And Val's aware of the fact that we have begun conversation with CHEO. And Val, perhaps you'd like to...
Sure. We've been quite involved over the course of the last 8 to 10 months with a number of initiatives across our board. Dr. Alison Inglis and myself sit on a Leeds and Grenville team, which has healthcare professionals, public health, mental health, every child in our community. It's quite a diverse team, and the goal of us sitting together to work towards what our strategies and plans are, because we all have expertise in different areas and we don't want to be overlapping our work. So that's happening in Leeds and Grenville. Susan Edwards sits on a similar team for Lanark, and most recently there's initiatives starting with Cornwall Community Hospital as well as Hawkesbury General Hospital for Glengarry, Prescott Russell, Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry, and Prescott Russell, and that is for an initiative for students with addictions in particular. But again, the cross-sector of people at that table represented both school boards, or many school boards actually, CAS, the public health. And so yes, we are engaging in those discussions, and we're looking at ways to put a number of initiatives forward, including reporting for suicide, what's the school's role, what's the community role, what's the parents' role, and how will the hospitals respond to that. And so we are trying to streamline our work so that people aren't duplicating work and we're not letting any students, adolescents, or youth fall through the cracks.
Director?
The other piece that we are hoping that comes out loud and clear, I meet with the medical officer of health regularly, sometimes once a month, usually it's about every 6 weeks. And both the medical officer for Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and for SDG, Prescott, Russell, Dr. Paul, we have really come to let them know. Also, for Terminus Catholic Board has done the same, they meet with us as well, that we will be certainly available to support any community outreach. And they were particularly interested in our community circles, community hubs, because what we see is a sort of a cradle-to-grave response to mental health. That as John has been digging, it's not just a school issue, it's an issue with the entire family and aging and so forth. And we have said that we're open to work with you, and I think the interesting thing will be watching the silos come down. From my perspective, there's still a lot of turf protecting. This is the people that, this is what I do, this is what you do. And I think what's really happening with some of the lead people, well, let's come together. Let's not be worried about our turf, let's be worried about the people we're serving. I think that's the piece I agree with John. Being second to this one, we may get some real learning, particularly from Hamilton, Wentworth, and also Durham, as to how the agencies have come together. And we have a problem similar into the northern rural boards where there's no service whatsoever. And what we have to do is figure out how where there's no service, quite often there's schools. And they see us as a potential circle or hub that we would host those types of things. So we let them know we're open for business and we want to work with them.
Any other comments? Trustee Garrow?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I guess the question, and this comes from one, being involved with Office Osage Mohawk Board as the director and that. But the question with other service agencies always come about the confidentiality, you know, and how, like, they were reluctant to provide some of the information, or even trying to get parents' approval to come in. There's a stigma, you know, and in some of the areas that we're dealing with. And that's always been trying to get people to the table to discuss these things, trying to get around the degree of confidentiality that, you know, people felt that needed to be there, and whether you take an oath or what have you. So I don't know how does, you know, maybe if there's ways to deal with that, but because I know that it still happens, and people are protecting their turf, but they're also looking at the reaches of the stigmatism attached to that.
The confidentiality piece has been a problem for each agency,
Right.
and what I see as rising to now at the planning level is to not to worry about that. Unless we're speaking about a specific family, which I may not have permission to share that information, but if you're speaking in generalities, then you can move. The other thing that has picked up, and I thank David for this, and I'm not sure who David stole it from, but I've certainly been using it on my 2 CBC interviews. I used it, is that there comes a point when confidentiality has to be trumped by life. That life trumps confidentiality, and that has gained a real momentum. That if we're worried about a situation, let's not get caught up in protecting or worried about this. If we have to do something to be bold and courageous for a child or a family, let's make the mistake of being bold to bring them service or put them in the right light, and then apologize later. And I think what happens at the leadership level, at the doctors level, they are certainly modeling for us that we can have very open conversations there if we're not talking about families.
Right.
But if you dive down into the minutia of the families and you find something, then it's better that we break the rule and help the person and the family in the situation, and then apologize later, if whatever. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we're really going to have to think about as we go through.
Thank you.
Trustee McCray?
I was just, through you, Chair, I was just going to say to our director, it's interesting that you brought that up, because actually at our last SEAC meeting, Dr. Andrew Thomas brought that exact point up, where he sits on a member at large on our SEAC committee, and he talked about the fine line between confidentiality and disclosure, and, you know, like he's saying, making that Trump decision regarding life.
And I imagine Dr. Thomas also, you can't be cavalier with it and just bust down every wall, no. But there comes a point where I think that when we start to learn and that this is the time for, and you do it carefully and cautiously, but you work with the family and make the right decision. And then and John's absolutely right, this is where Hamilton, Durham, Trillium Lakelands, they're really cutting their teeth on these issues, and we're watching closely. In these situations, each of the directors are a good friend of mine, and we're paying close attention, and particularly with Durham, they have a lot of learning there with 2 very large psych units there, and so forth, that there's a great deal to be learned from that group.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee McAllister, for an update on that. Report of the Special Education Advisory Committee, Trustee McCray.
So I as well circulated what happened at our last SEAC meeting on December the 6th. Trustee Susan Richards chaired in the absence of Kathy Blair, our chair. And our 2 new members were present, Melinda Long, who's from Parents for Children with Mental Health, and Corey Earl, member at large. Susan welcomed our new members. Our first presentation was given by Janice Deacon, who is the Student Engagement Coordinating Principal, and she talked about supporting school success teams. And in fact, Victoria put together a brochure which Victoria Hemmings put together a flyer, which I've circulated this evening. It's double-sided for you to take a look at. The purpose of the school-based support school success team is to reach a shared understanding of instructional and behavioral challenges in the classroom, and also to develop new, effective interventions and strategies to work with our students. It's a forum for problem solving and planning through consultation with all colleagues. And the bottom line is to build basically teacher capacity and move the student and the classroom forward. Our board has 15 student engagement teachers, and there's basically one for each family of schools. And Nancy Holman also joined in the presentation. She's one of these teachers who works with Brockville and Athens, and they help identify school concerns, build community partnerships. And it's interesting that often through these processes and solutions, not only is the individual student helped, but they build strategies that can work with other students, and they end up building class capacity and move forward. There were two recommendations that were brought forward after the presentation. Corey Earl, one of our new members, asked if students had been asked what they thought of the process, and had they been asked if this helped them to meet their educational goals. And Victoria suggested that maybe data would need to be collected, and this might be a project for our research team. Trustee Susan Richards, I thought, made a very good point, and that was the importance of developing and tailoring a brochure for the parents, as many of them can become confused by the layers of support and who the players are and what exactly are their areas of responsibility. In conclusion, there was a superintendent's report given by Victoria Hemming, and that included discussion about the 7 to 12 school transition committee meetings and reports that are due mid-December, and those are going very well. Brief discussion on hubs and nodes and the focus on mathematics. The November Upper Canada School Board Employees Annual Retirement Dinner, Crew Day, Crew Character Review. And then there were brief presentation reports from the different parents and parent representatives, and I've included that. And in conclusion, on January the 10th, there will be the election of our chair and vice chair for the CF committee. Okay, so that's pretty well it.
Thank you very much. Trustee McCray, any comments or questions? Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was reading your report, you had listed 18 potential future topics, and I found it curious and somewhat disappointing that of all those topics, when we are closing the Kinsman School in Cornwall and attempting to fold these extremely needy students into regular school education, that was not one of the topics listed.
Thank you, Trustee Buckland. Trustee McAllister?
May I suggest we add it as a topic, or as a recommendation to the CI committee that they add it as a topic?
Trustee McDonald?
Just a point of clarification. Although Kinsman School is closing as it stands today, the students are moving. The students at Kinsman are in section classes, section designated classes. Those I'll get it out yet. Section designated classes are actually moving locations. So secondary age students will be moving to CCDS, elementary age students moving to Central, and integration is done at a individual student and parent level. So it's not moving into the mainstream class, it's moving as a unit into the school.
Any other comments? Okay, thanks very much, Trustee McCray. Next up is the Ontario Public School Board Association report, and I'll leave that, open up the floor to Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things that I want to go over. On November 25th and 26th, the OPSPA Board of Directors met in Toronto. I'll give you some highlights of that meeting. The next thing I want to talk about is some, I guess, current news as it relates to education and OPSPA's involvement. And the third thing is about future OPSPA events. So just moving into the meeting that took place on the 24th and 25th, some of the key points discussed was a presentation by Representative, I can't think of her name, Sheila, no.
Who are you talking about?
Shibley Wrighton. Sure. Anyway, we had a lawyer make a presentation on the Code of Conduct.
Sheila McKinnon.
Sheila McKinnon on Friday, Friday evening, sorry. That information has been shared with you, I guess, as a template that boards can use to help develop the Code of Conduct moving forward. So the long-awaited template is out. I won't speak into that too much because I think we have some work to do. The committee is going to be doing some work on that as we move forward. There was a couple of updates on the Children Youth Mental Health Coalition, EQAO Assessment Advisory, and a good part of the meeting actually was dedicated to financial and labor relations updates. So on the Saturday we spent a good chunk of time talking about our presentations that we would be making to the government based on the GSN needs or I guess requirements that we feel should be addressed. And those needs or those requirements that should be addressed basically are outlined in the key areas, the key work of OPSPA, those 8 key areas. So we're highlighting those areas, we're ensuring that we deliver the same message time and time again so that we can address those needs. And certainly those needs are around children mental health, First Nation Métis education, some work around professional development for our trustees, funding, baseline funding increases around what we would need as far as transportation issues and other classroom type funding issues. The labor relations side of things we discussed in camera, but certainly I can tell you that OPSPA is heavily involved at preparing for labor relations. Although there is no formal process yet as established by the ministry, there is considerable talk and discussion to be had to ensure that OPSPA has a voice at the table, and we're not quite certain that it'll be the same frame as 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I guess, whatever it was, as far as provincial discussion talks, but certainly OPSPA is hopeful that they can be involved to some degree and will carry the message forward on behalf of boards as well. The other thing that we did talk about at the meeting, when I go back to EQAO, I had stepped out of the room to deal with something and came back in, and one of the things we talked about in EQAO is a letter that had been sent home to parents by EQAO, and then I missed this piece, but there's a percentage of the grade 9 test that can be placed in the overall mark of students. So I'm not quite certain that I was familiar with this, and I think it's something that we need to look at and perhaps have some more information come back to this board. I'm not certain that I understood that as a trustee, but certainly some of the messaging that's going home to parents had some trustees concerned, and certainly even the weighting that was placed on the mark as a result of the test. So I bring that up as hopefully that we can look at having some discussions or more information on that in a future board meeting or committee meeting. That's about it for. Just on the transportation side of things, one of the things they talked about as far as funding flowing and understanding the level of funding that's in place today, and if a program was introduced in the future. And they used the example of French immersion program only being at grade 1 in an area. So there's transportation funding associated to that delivery of that program. And if in the future you decide to deliver that program at kindergarten level, they may not transfer funds associated to delivering that program. That was just a kind of an anecdotal example. So some things to look out for in the future as we move forward, and certainly some of the things that we talk about from a transportation consortium, ensuring that what one practice is being administered in one board is not necessarily, or may potentially not have the availability to other boards moving forward. OPSPA in the news, there's a couple things that I just wanted to touch base on. So I guess going back to the code of conduct, we talk about that. Certainly the information came out to trustees. It included the template, and included the letter back in June from the minister. So that is to form the basis of how boards look at that. Certainly it's not a concrete example that must be instituted word for word, but certainly it's an example that we can use. Of the recent news that's come out, the bullying initiative, which was Bill 13, Accepting Schools Act. I think we're all familiar with what's happened with that, the rationale for it. But there are some requirements from a school board level. School board requirements are to develop and implement an equity and inclusive education policy, promote a positive school climate that is inclusive and accepting for all students, promote the prevention of bullying, use school climate surveys to collect student information regarding bullying prevention, etc., at least once every 2 years. It must be an anonymous survey. Must have to submit policies and guidelines to the minister, principal delegation. Establish policies and guidelines with respect to bullying prevention and intervention in schools, and support students who want to establish and lead activities and organizations that promote gender equity, anti-racism awareness, respect for people with disabilities, or awareness, respect for people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, including organizations with the name Gay, Straight, Alliance, or other name. So certainly, I think we have a number of things in place for this board, but there are some things that we need to address. That's from an Accepting Schools Act perspective. In the Anti-Bullying Act, which is actually Bill 14, there are some legislative requirements as well, from the school board requirements. We have to track yearly statistics on bullying, make available to the public, provide age-appropriate bullying prevention instruction for all students, including kindergarten, offer both victim and perpetrator professionally developed remedial programs, mandatory for students who are suspended or expelled for bullying or bullying-related behavior, establish PD for teachers regarding bullying, establish a bullying prevention plan for bullying in schools. This is to include reporting, investigating procedures, confidentiality and protection issues, notification to parents, and potentially notifying law enforcement, requiring principals to submit data on reports of bullying to the board every year, solicit views from pupils, teachers, board staff, volunteers, parents and guardians, school councils, and the public when creating the board bullying prevention plan, and post board bullying prevention plan on the board website and make available to the public. So some of these things that we don't necessarily have, certainly we have some policies, but not a plan in place. I think, some of these things are welcome. OPSPA certainly is supportive of much of this information. I think we would be foolish to say that legislation will prevent things. So we need to ensure that we do our due diligence to follow up the requirements of the board. But certainly, I think initiatives that we have, like our character education and other initiatives in our schools, are all supportive of I think, changing a cycle as opposed to trying to stop something in its tracks. So moving forward, I think the steps that we've taken within our school are great initiatives and will lead to success down the road. That's it from an OPSPA standpoint in the news. Moving forward, though, OPSPA in general, we have a number of things taking place. On September 26th to 28th, there's a Public Education Symposium in Toronto. January. What did I say?
September.
Oh, sorry. Way ahead of myself. or way behind. January 26th, 28th, it's a public education symposium. The keynote speaker will be Dr. Deborah Pepler. Dr. Pepler's research has changed the way we think about bullying, aggression, and other forms of violence. Her major focus is on aggression and victimization among children and adolescents, particularly in the school context. Her presentation is on Saturday morning. So it's a good session. There are some sessions on the religious accommodations, legal pitfalls for trustees, code of conduct, health and safety, your personal work style, leadership. Some good sessions. The minister is confirmed to attend, and also Kathleen Wynne, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. So that's the key piece there. Minister Wynne being a previous Minister of Education, but certainly her perspective now on Aboriginal Affairs, which is a new portfolio within the ministry, or within the government. Also moving forward, there is some things taking place. There's a CSBA conference in July 4th to 6th, 2012 in Quebec City. I think it's Quebec City. Yeah, it is Quebec. Just putting that out there for information right now. Also, one thing that we may want to consider and investigate a little bit further is the 2012 Premier's Awards for Teaching Excellence. Nomination deadlines are February 6th, 2012 for different areas, including Teacher of the Year, New Teacher of the Year, Early Childhood Educator, Excellent Support Staff, Excellence in Leadership, Team of the Year, Full Day Kindergarten Team of the Year, and Lifetime Achievement. So it certainly would be nice if we had some nominations and some winners from Upper Canada. And there will be a session on January 19th for chairs and vice chairs within the province. It's a strategic leadership conference hosted by the ministry. Part of the new requirements from the ministry to have strategic plans. So I think our strategic plan is well ahead of the curve, but certainly there are a number of boards that are just getting started. So that's some of the information that OPSPO will be involved in, and certainly some of your representatives here as well. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did they talk about the amount of funding that was going to be added to do all the work around the implementation of their new rules on bullying?
The ministry?
Yeah. No. Shocking. I'm also interested in whether they are going to standardize the formats for the reports between school boards, or is it up to school board by school board to determine what that looks like?
I don't know. It doesn't say. I don't believe it says in here on the information that I have.
Because if it's not standardized, there's no board going to go out on the limb and over-report here.
We'd have to, I mean...
You know, like, think about it.
We'd have to look at the actual, I mean, it's only at initial reading right now, right? It's not not legislation yet, or regulation by any means, but certainly that's the plan moving forward. I suspect, though, that it will move forward fairly quickly. It's received first reading. Just to note, the minister has put forward Bill 13, which is an act to amend the Education Act with respect to bullying and other matters. Bill 14 is an act that's been put forward by, this is an act to designate Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week in schools and to provide for bullying prevention curricula, policies, and administrative accountability in schools. That's a private member's bill by Elizabeth Whitney. So 2 bills before the House dealing with similar situations.
And is there a standard definition going to be applied to bullying?
I think it's going to evolve, right? First reading is really the kick at the can. So I think it'll be very difficult to put a standard definition to bullying, though.
Any comments, questions, Trustee McAllister?
A couple of things with regard to the code of conduct, which Trustee McDonald has referred to. We are very close. We have worked with the government legislation, because there are certain parts of it that have to be in our template or in our code. We've worked with OPSPA and our own lawyers with regard to this. The piece that is missing is that of enforcement, and we hope to get some information at the January 26th symposium. So I'm suspecting that we will be able to come back to you sometime in February, if not March, with a draft code of conduct for your perusal. The second thing I would like to mention is with regard to the school climate surveys, which Trustee McDonald referred to. We at the Mental Health Work Group are looking at some sort of a survey of our students and our staffs, but we might be able to incorporate some of the needs and questions into that survey to help us out. The third thing that really concerns me a lot is the EQAO testing and the use of the individual, or the potential use of the individual, of a percentage of the individual tests for reporting. To the best of my knowledge, the whole system of EQAO was never, ever meant for the purpose of dealing with individual students. It was meant as a profile of a school and a board at a given moment in time. And I find that personally very objectionable. So I hope you might bring my little concern forward.
I have asked Lisa to add that to our manager council, and we'll bring it forward and have a discussion at the table about that, see what's that and the mental health piece, the bullying piece, sorry.
Just on the bullying piece, Bill 13, which is put forward by the minister, does have a definition for bullying. It means repeated and aggressive behavior by a pupil where the behavior is intended by the pupil to cause, or the pupil ought to know that the behavior would be likely to cause harm, fear, or distress to another individual, including psychological harm or harm to the individual's reputation, and the behavior occurs in a context where there is a real or perceived power imbalance between the pupil and the individual based on factors such as size, strength, age, intelligence, peer group power, economic status, social status, religion, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, family circumstances, gender, race, disability, or the receipt of special education.
And that's good. I'm glad there is. The big thing here will be that we know that when we talk to our constituents that bullying is used as a term to apply to almost any physical aggression in the playground. Probably 90% of that physical aggression never meets the test of bullying, but that's what it's, and so I think that there's going to be a real disconnect if we're not careful between the reporting of it and the parent's perception of it, unless the ministry does a lot of work to explain and build people's understanding. That would be my concern. If they go at it with a big educational campaign, so that people finally understand what bullying really means, then it's going to be excellent. But that would be difficult if they decide to do it at the best, and my bet is that it won't happen.
I mean, even with this definition, I think it's problematic right now. To put your head around what exactly is bullying. I mean, they're trying to include everything, and a lot of normal interaction between children could be perceived to be bullying based on some of this information. And I think from an intention standpoint and what actually moves forward, we heard reference to what happened with EKO. Intentions and actual actions tend to change from year to year and month to month. So what might be put forward today as first reading certainly will change by time royal assent happens, but even when it becomes legislation, it may be construed and used in different ways, and that's an issue.
Trustee McAllister?
I would suggest, Chair, that any child who is being bullied knows the definition of bullying. I would suggest to you that any parent whose child is being bullied knows the definition of bullying. And I just hope that the resources that are going to be emanating from, as a result of this legislation and information from us, will be student-based and school-based.
I think it's significant enough and could impact our schools significantly that we should probably keep a pretty close eye on it. And I imagine that's going to be Mr. Coons,
A number, but Dave takes it. But I guess my concern, David, I listen to this thing, is we know with all the best research on bully related, is the role of the bystander. And I think that any proper bullying program has a huge component to play with. 95% of us are bystanders. And what do? So we have the bully, then we have the victim. What's that whole group thing in between? Of course, when the bystanders empower the bully by sometimes by not stopping it or yells and screams, or this is good, way to go, fight, whatever it's called, it goes on. And this can be subtle in other ways as well. And I think when you take a look at the Facebook bullying that's going on right now, again, the bystanders are critical agent in the bullying as we go through. So I'm hoping that, and my other concern, I want to throw this at the boards of education, is that bullying is only our problem. I can walk you into any hospital, I can walk you into any place, I can walk you into in a church and show you a number of people, who the bully is and who the isn't, and as if there's an age division with it. I'm very concerned with that. I go back to a story I tell all the time. My aunt, visiting her in a nursing home, she had 82 packages of sauce, of applesauce and everything, and she was collecting them because a bully down the hall took the applesauce from all the other ones. And this woman was in her 80s, big, strong woman. She just marched down and scooped them off the other ones. And I don't think it's sandboxes where the bullying. Let's teach the kids properly, but let's push back to some of these people trying to tell us. CNN thinks this is a middle school problem. It's a societal problem.
Go ahead.
I certainly agree with what you said as far as being a societal issue, and something I comment back to people within my community when they point the finger to what's wrong in any particular area. They say, well, you got to do this in the school, and you have to do this in the school. I'm thinking, well, it's a shared responsibility when it comes to many things in our communities. I think my main concern, and it was echoed by many, is that I think the legislation is well intended. There's information in here that's required. It's the reporting mechanisms, though, that scare the heck out of me, because it really doesn't get to address the problems. I mean, reporting mechanisms just shine the light on potential issues, and the real work that needs to get done is, we're chasing the tail in many cases because the media picks up the wrong things and deals with those things. This legislation, this proposed legislation, really is put forward as a result of many of the suicides within our province. So some of the things that are taking place within the mental health initiatives are certainly going to help these types of things. It really does tie hand in hand to some degree. And so, I believe and understand the rationale for doing this and making sure that we don't lose more young people in our province as a result of some of these things. But again, we go back and we look at just, and it's not the same table, but EPAO is to help improve students on an individual level, and they've moved this into a reporting mechanism to rate schools and to rate communities, and that's reporting on behavior or bullying is only going to put a negative context back into public education. It's there, it exists, we understand that, it exists everywhere, not just within the confines of a public school. So now I think the minister needs to take some of that information back, but moving forward, if this does become legislation, I think it kind of one of our initiatives that we continually do is that regardless of what the legislation is, if we feel that there's something needs to be done in addition to address those types of things, then certainly we do it and we go above and beyond, whether it's bullying, behavior issues, or whether it's strategic planning, or whatever the case may be. I think we've set the stage for many things across the province, and I think we hope that we continue to do that. We meet the mandatory requirements, but we take it a step further and make sure that we address the problems.
Student trustee Howe?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back a bit to what the director was saying and just make a little note. We're talking about bystanders, how important they are in the bullying. A big problem with cyberbullying, especially on Facebook, is that people don't get to choose whether they're a bystander or not, because I'm not sure how many of you know exactly how Facebook works, but there's what's called a status, so people can write things, and everybody else on their Facebook can see that, all their friends, and sometimes more than that. A lot of times bullying occurs on these types of things, and everybody who that person allows to see their Facebook can see that. So the bystanders, the number of bystanders is actually quite a lot, like a lot more than you get in like an actual person-to-person type of bullying where everybody was physically there. On Facebook, you get people who have 500, 600 friends. All of a sudden, that bullying can be seen by all 500 to 600 of those friends. So the cyberbullying on Facebook is kind of takes it to a higher level, because the bully might feel even more empowered because there's even more people who are witnessing this. I find that's just a point some people might not realize.
Good point.
I may coattail on Jacob's particular thoughts. This is where I would suggest that during college teachers re-examine their view of teachers on Facebook and in the social media. We have a wonderful situation at Glengarry where a veteran teacher, probably my age, around between 40 and 54, she asked her students to take her on as a friend, and she said she was going to have her classroom as a bully-free zone, and that none of us were going to be a victim, nor a bully, nor a bystander. And she used the Facebook perfectly, not to go in there and be creepy and say, you know, who's Jacob dating this weekend? It was to say, just a second, like, tone it down. Everyone has a right to do this. And what she became was almost a teacher guide on the side. And when the caller, to me, there's nothing creepy about that at all. It's sort of like, you know, if you're at the mall and you're walking down the mall, as John's been doing his thing at the mall, and you see a couple of kids doing the wrong thing, you don't all of a sudden, I'm not a teacher today, I'm just doing this for the Salvation Army. Hey, come on, guys, toe the line. We're in this together. And that's what I think we have to start to really recognize it. You make a very good point, Jacob. It's a wizard at his work.
Yeah, can't count, though. All right, Tanya, Trustee Buckland.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I thank our Director, Vice Chair McDonald, for the report, and it led me to think about how we could be stronger, and perhaps with more coordination we could also have strength. When we're looking at the bullying, we want to be certain that the legislation comes out with our concerns and so on. And I was mentioning that we're trying to lobby the government on the salary issue. Before the 1996 amalgamation, I don't know if it exists yet or not, but there was a trustees council of the different groups, the English, the French, and the religious, that if it doesn't exist, perhaps it could now begin to develop this sort of thing, because Minister Duncan and the Premier McGuinty has been telling me that he's going to save money. So I think of such things as coordination with strength could save us money. That is, this report tonight. Perhaps we could be the group leading this for even the four boards in our area, and one of the other boards could then be using resources to develop bullying in the way that the boards could agree to it, so that I think maybe this could be the time to do that. There is an urgency financially, and a new government. Perhaps we should be working toward moving together, at least with the other three boards in our area, so that our voice is stronger, and the coordination leads to a delegation of work, which could mean not as much work for one individual board. Thought.
Thank you, Trustee Buckland, and just to speak to that, one of the areas where we lagged a little bit and it looked like maybe it was going to be difficult to work together on Transportation Consortium. We'll shortly be bringing you up to speed on a number of developments, but it's captured our attention that even though we were last to it, we're rapidly going to become the most advanced board in the implementation. So I think that it probably speaks to the level of trust in that we're starting to develop with our coterminous boards, and so you're probably right, there's an opportunity to look at other avenues. I think on the bullying legislation, in the past we've gone and presented to the committees, the select committees. We did that with Bill 177 to some effect. And I think that we might want to monitor and see if there's something that captures our attention that we think they need some feedback on, because these types of things, you know, are really, I applaud the direction, but it's the implementation that often is what causes the issues, and it's pushed down to us. It's clear that this legislation is going to be the implementation is going to be left to us, so I think that we should very carefully monitor it, keep track of the legislative schedule so that we don't miss an opportunity should we want to.
That's your
So
90-second question, and
that's right. And whenever your staff feel that they understand it or feel that it's appropriate, we probably should bring their thoughts to the board.
well, Ted's left that portfolio in very good shape, and David's picking up it, has been running with it, and that may be very appropriate. Dave, be ready
Certainly.
for a presentation to that committee.
Yep. Everybody in agreement with that? Okay. Anything else out of your report?
Do I have anything else?
I was trying to think of something. I'm thinking out loud right now, but no, I think that's it, right? We got everything, picked up everything? Okay. So there's two pieces out of that, the grade 9 math and the bullying. All right, thank you, Second Vice McDonald, for your update. Now move to the report of the workings of Student Trustee Howe.
Thank you. As per usual, our Student Senate meeting was a success. All senators engaged in an excited discussion about what was happening in their schools. We had two presentations at our meeting. The first was a presentation by North Grenville District High School's Mrs. Murdoch and her Link Crew. Link Crew is a unique and effective means of incorporating new grade 9 students into the high school setting through senior student role models, for whom this is an actual course they participate in for the first semester. The reception to this presentation was enthusiastic, as the vast majority of the students at the end were wondering how they can get this in their schools. Our second presentation was by Helen Lalonde on the inclusion of LGBTQ students in schools. She spoke of the frequency of use of derogatory terms towards LGBTQ students and the need for this to end to facilitate an equitable education for all students. This presentation was very well received by all our senators because they see this happening in their schools all the time. Mrs. Lalonde challenged everyone to initiate change in their schools to stop this bullying and make LGBTQ students feel safe in their school environment. Also at our Senate, we gave a brief look at the new My.UCDSB network to be launched soon, and we will be having a presentation about this at our next Senate meeting on February 17th. I have also been asked to do a short video talking about the new My.UCDSB network. In addition to this video, at the same time, we will be filming another short video which outlines in more detail and a little more clearly the role of student trustee. We realized that not many of our senators actually had a firm grasp of what I do as trustee and how the actual position works. So hopefully this video will clear up some confusion, and we'll be able to release a video before our student trustee elections, which will be at our next meeting. To finish, I'd like to remind everyone that our next Student Senate meeting will be on February 17th. As well, the senators have voted on a theme for this meeting. This theme will be Pajama Day. So if you plan to attend, as I encourage everyone to try to attend, be sure to wear your nice pajamas. Thanks.
Yeah.
With the feet?
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
I will be assigning some trustees to attend. So just watch your email. Yes, you're going.
No,
Go ahead.
well, actually, Trustee McAllister and I are talking right now to make sure our pajamas don't clash. What I do want to say is I've been to the last two Senate meetings, and the last one I stayed for the entire meeting. And I want to compliment you, Jacob, on the way you run that meeting and the confidence that you have from all of the student senators. It's a real rewarding experience to be a part of that, because you're in a room with some energetic, positive students who you know are going to make a huge difference not only in their school but in life in general. So it's a wonderful experience. I feel very privileged to even be able to come to that.
Thank you. We enjoy having you there.
Well, we'll be there, right, Mr.
Pajamas.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if I'm going now.
Will we get pictures of this?
Yes.
Do we have standardized pajamas at work?
All right. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Wonderful.
Very good.
All right, move now to remarks. Go around the table first. Trustee Garrow?
Yeah, just to let you know that Grand Chief Mitchell, Galiwa Gala Mitchell, along with the National Chief Sean Ianshut Atdale, Regional Chief Angus Toulouse, Susan Aglucart, and Olympian Wanique Horn-Miller did go to Attawapiskat yesterday as a special delegation not to try to say that here we're going to provide you more clothes or what have you, but to try to find solutions on long-term needs and to work with them. And Grand Chief Mike Mitchell, who'll probably be back. I'll try to get an idea what took place in that. So this is the first time that they've had a group go up as a delegation like this, and as well as maybe it's time. I do want to congratulate, of course, Jeff, for the vice chair, but I also want to congratulate Carol. I thought both of your speeches were excellent, and both of you were put forward. So I just wanted to thank you both.
Trustee McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I haven't taken the liberty to do this for some time, but I want to put a shameful plug in for something that's very near and dear to my heart. United Way campaigns in our areas have wrapped up, and the Leeds and Grenville campaign has certainly had a very successful year this year, doing well over $1 million. SDG has certainly met their goal. In excess of $670,000. I think Lanark was on target to meet theirs. Prescott and Russell, they have a little bit of a blip in their area, but certainly the United Ways in Eastern Ontario are supporting them, and United Way Ottawa certainly is going to help out. The reason I bring it up is because the period from September to December is typically the campaign for United Ways. United Ways in our area, if we add them all together, support probably about 75 agencies in our communities. And those agencies are things like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Developmental Services, Girls Inc. in the Leeds and Grenville area, and some very unique agencies and programs within those areas. Those agencies, those programs, is what our students, our staff to some degree, access on a daily basis. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention that as we move into 2012, United Way Canada certainly has put something in place to kind of make what's considered to be a community impact. And they have 3 calls of action, I guess, or 3 calls of duty for the gaming world. But certainly there is give, volunteer, and act. And that's I guess the call to the grounds for our communities. And the focus areas of United Way movement is to focus on from poverty to possibility, healthy people, strong communities, and certainly all that kids can be. So focusing on the youth aspect, community enhancement, community supports, and improving or eliminating, where possible, poverty. Those are areas that we know affect our students on a regular basis. And so as we move forward into 2012, pay attention to the agencies, pay attention to the United Way in your area, and if you can, give, volunteer, or act. So I just wanted to use the soapbox for that, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to do that.
No problem. Trustee Karkner.
I had the opportunity in the last couple of weeks to attend one of the school hubs that goes on. And I was extremely impressed with the process, and I congratulate the staff for bringing this type of professional development forward. The teachers were so excited about the process. The children were quite relaxed with a whole group of people in their classroom. I was thoroughly impressed, and if this is the way that professional development is going in our board, it's great. Keep it up. Fantastic. Thank you.
Well done, Ian.
Trustee McCray?
I just, with the holiday season upon us, I was at a Christmas concert recently at Carambeck School. And I have to say that Stephen Ferguson, our principal, did an incredible job. It's a real emotional roller coaster for that school and that school community, because this is their last concert. That school will be closing. And I just thought that he did an incredible job, and of also bringing teachers that had taught at that school back as a reunion to be part of the Christmas concert was an added touch. They had incredible involvement from the community and volunteers, and the students themselves and the parents were totally engaged. It was just a wonderful event. And I also wanted to congratulate Susan Edwards and Victoria Hemming on their work on the transition for Ward 1. There are two high schools, Current Place High School and Almont District High School, that are going through that transition. And it's been a challenge, but they've done a great job with that. And Charlotte Paxton, thank you for your assistance as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Karkner.
Following in Trustee McDonald's, I have something that's near and dear to my heart as well that I'm going to share with you, and that is the Madagascar School Project. And you must be, or if you're not familiar with it, it was started by a teacher at Maxwell Public School, and it's a fantastic program. She's building schools, several schools in the community, and they have a wish list that they put out for Christmas as to how you can support their project. So if anyone would like this information, I can forward it to you. They're looking for things like school supplies or financial commitment to the school. And I've adopted a child over there by providing money monthly for the child to get the necessary needs. And for $2 a week, it's a Tim's coffee. I think I can afford that, and it's certainly something that one child will benefit from. So if anyone wants the information, just let me know and I'll forward it to you. And Kathy Lucking needs to be congratulated for the work that she's done. And Art knows that. We've been at the fundraiser together, and it's amazing what she's doing.
Any other comments? Director?
I would just like to wish everyone a great Christmas season. We are going full out, and we have been going full out for the fall and it's early winter. And I'm very, very proud of the work that's going on in our schools. And it's a very special time to be in our schools to watch the kids. And I know that the next 2 days probably won't be snow days. But the kids can hardly wait to get back to do all the funny things they do. And for this table, both... if I have the, be careful I do this as director, but I thought both the speeches today were really mature, very reflective of what this table has become. And I love the fact that both the candidates spoke about this table has become a student-centered, student-focused table. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we leave here feeling good about what we're doing for kids. And so to both Carol and to Jeff. That was just music to my ears as the first teacher of the board. Thank you.
So, thanks everyone. The final word comes with me, and I am not going to allow the director to speak again, so forget it. Trustees, this has been quite a 12 months. I think that we should be proud of the work that we've done, and certainly the footing that we're on going into the new year, I think it just amazes me of what it will not amaze me as to what we'll manage to accomplish next year, because I think there's a tremendous amount of energy and excitement. At this time of the year, it's always, I always like to reflect on those that have passed on over the years, and I come back and think of Superintendent Kennedy, and there are many others, and I will let you mention some of those if you like at this moment. Are you okay? Everybody have a safe Christmas holiday. Take some earned time to recharge your batteries, because I've seen Director Thomas Santa's list of the 2012 projects, and if you thought this year was going to be busy, you should see next year. He's ready to go, so that's tremendous. So Merry Christmas, and if I don't see you, have a great New Year. Motion to adjourn. Trustee McMillan, Trustee Richards, all in favor?